crypto exchange Coinbase has obtained a payment institution license from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Joining us now to discuss is Coinbase's country director for Singapore, Hassan Ahmed. Welcome, Hassan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Okay, can you just first, before we get into this, like really simply, what does this mean, a payment license? Is this basically to operate an exchange in Singapore? Is this for retail, institutional, both? If you could just explain in very simple terms what this actually means.
Sure, happy to break it down. So as you mentioned, Coinbase's subsidiary in Singapore has received a license from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. The technical name of the license is called a Major Payments Institution license. And within that, there's a bunch of sleeves of services that you can offer. So this applies to both general fintech companies, but also to crypto companies. And for crypto companies, the specific service is called digital payment tokens, which allows for buying and selling and trading of effectively crypto assets. So we have received a full MPI license as of this week. And that's been a long and interesting licensing journey for us over here locally.
Well, so I just a couple more questions just to make sure everyone gets the facts straight here. Because like Coinbase already had a team in Singapore, right? So what were you guys doing there before? Were you just sort of working to get the license? If you could explain the kind of what's changed here.
Sure. So we set up our office in Singapore about 4 years ago. And at that time, it was just a local entity and an employment entity for practical purposes. In 2020, when the MAS announced that they were breaking ground on what's called as the Payment Services Act, that's the formal name of the legislation, and within that, they would create a fit-for-purpose crypto licensing framework. That sort of, this is a few years ago, but if you might recall, that actually started a little bit of a rush for many companies to go ahead and apply for the license. So we had already set up a shop in Singapore as intending to be our Asia hub. And as we had started getting comfortable with the market, we saw the promise and the conviction sort of in the market. And so we had applied for that license as well. Now, again, on a technical level, once you applied for the license, you were operating there on an exempt basis. So it's on an as-if basis that you would be regulated. So that did allow us to start offering our products and services right away. For consumers, as well as for institutions. So we have been operating on that basis in the market for a few years. But with this announcement and this licensing milestone today, that effectively kind of cements our position in the market and allows us to take a much longer term view in terms of the services we want to offer and how we want to grow in this market and the ecosystem.
So, okay, so just to be clear, because like Singapore, this is basically Coinbase operating in Singapore. Who are the target customers? Is it, can like other people all over the region use it, or is it basically geared towards Singapore retail, Singapore institutional? Because my understanding is that the Singapore market is actually not that big, right? So, like, who can trade on this exchange?
Yeah, so the license itself allows for products and services to be offered to really kind of both domestic as well as cross-border. Today, we are offering services to the local market that are for consumers and institutions that choose to be papered to Coinbase Singapore. So on the consumer side of things, what it really helps and unlocks is sort of the fiat rails. So we have a fiat on-ramp in Singapore where consumers can top up their accounts with Sing Dollar using their local bank accounts. And they can use things like SingPass in order to pass KYC very quickly and use real-time payment rails. For institutions, we have our kind of core institutional exchange product that's offered in Singapore. So that's typically for market makers, asset managers, institutions and businesses that are actively trading along with receiving custodial services. Over time, that license does allow us the flexibility and the breadth to do more. But today we are operating on a domestic basis. Emily, and also maybe just to add on to your point about, Singapore is a small market. That was also, one of our initial inclinations when we had first started the journey. But it's important to remember that Singapore is a very important financial center as well. I think at this point it's ranked sort of number 3 on some surveys after New York and London, especially with what sort of happened in after COVID. There's been a lot of capital flows into Singapore. The rate of like family office creation, I think, has 7x'd over the past few years. So a lot of that kind of wealth effect is now being kind of captured, within Singapore as well. So even if the kind of core consumer base may not seem like it's that much, actually the number of wealthy and affluent individuals in Singapore has increased pretty rapidly, especially in the last few years.
Hassan, Coinbase in the US has been pretty vocal about how difficult it's been to work with regulators. What was it like working with the Monetary Authority in Singapore? And I guess more specifically, how hard was it to get this license?
Yeah, great question. The way I'd characterize it is that the MAS really is a lighthouse regulator for the region. They're sort of tough but fair and collaborative. So as we went through the licensing journey, the way to maybe sort of think about it is there's a supervisory department that's in charge of making sure that license applicants are ticking all the boxes and are at the level they expect. And there's the policy department that's thinking about the next wave of regulations that they want to kind of bring into being. So because crypto is a new industry, actually these two things are somewhat fluid at times. And what our experience was that the MAS is generally, very open and collaborative with industry. They'll put out draft guidelines. They'll solicit industry feedback either directly or through industry trade associations, and then they'll bake that into their thinking before they publish final guidelines. Of course, there's regulatory outcomes that they're wanting to achieve. There's certain maybe risks that are bright line. But what we've seen is they're very, very open to input, and a lot of like constructive industry dialogue happens along the way as well.
How long did it take?
So our licensing journey was long-ish. It took us about 2 years from the point of application to getting to this point. But as I mentioned, we were operating on an exempt basis anyway, so it wasn't that that challenging from a commercial and kind of an offering basis. I think it was just more that as we kind of went along, some of these kind of factors also changed, especially since it's the topic du jour, kind of post FTX. And I think there were just more sort of up-level requirements that many industry applicants had to achieve along the way. And so I'm pleased to say that we were able to do that pretty comfortably.
All right, Hassan, we got to wrap it there. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, and congratulations on the license.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
That was Coinbase's country director for Singapore, Hassan Ahmed.